Hagmann Report for today. It's Tuesday, November 19th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host, along with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, you're about to hear three hours of unbiased and uncensored news and information and analysis of the same. Folks, you're listening to the only show where we present the news to you in 3D. We look beyond the headlines. We add depth to the news. We bring you the news behind the news. For the new listeners checking in with us, I want to thank Chad in Montgomery, Alabama, for checking in, and Janine out of Fort Worth, Texas, Brad, Missoula, Montana, and also Len from Fort Myers, Florida. Thank you very much for sending in your emails and letting us know you're listening to us here. Interestingly, those were all in the United States this time. But thanks for joining us. Of course, you can find us at our home base on the internet, HomelandSecurityUS.com. We're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune into us just by typing in the URL, the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. That's the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. Spell it all out, 2 N's, and of course the word and. I want to thank everyone again for joining with us tonight. I want to thank you for your belief, your trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events, this perilous time that we're in together. You know, we've got so much news. We've gone through so much news today, and some very, very pointed, very important news items that I think, well, we talked about one yesterday, and that's about the job numbers. We also have some police state news, and of course, the second hour, we're going to be welcoming Mr. Stan Dale from standale.com, and our, of course, regular Tuesday guest. Can't wait for that. And, Joe, it's going to be an interesting time.
Yeah, we have an announcement. We'll announce right before Stan comes on. Well, actually, we can get into it now. We have the Prudent Places contest, giving away of 10 Prudent Places CD-ROMs or flash drives, how they did the Dare to Prepare giveaway of the books. We're going to be starting up that giveaway and have the drawing next week when Stan comes on, right before Stan comes on. So another contest, courtesy of Stan and Holly Dale.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, Prudent Places USA, we have a copy of that. I cannot believe how much information it contains. And folks, people think perhaps that it would be only useful if you're thinking about moving. Not so. You need to know what's around you, where you're at, and well prepared, surprised as to what you can learn, important things about the area in which you live.
Yeah, I really would like to get into the Prudent Places and look at myself, but you still have them the disk and the flash drive and have it locked away in a safe, I imagine, as I searched the office today and found nothing.
And I'm guarding it with my Hagmann and Hagmann Nerf bat. Okay, now that's important. We should actually open up like a store and sell those Hagmann Nerf bats. Of course, we'd have to probably register that as a weapon with the Department of Homeland Security or something like that, some crazy deal. I do want to call your attention, folks, to something. We will be updating our website. It's just been an incredible time here. I got to tell you honestly, we've been
the conference.
Yeah.
You feel? I mean, I know we've been back. What is today? Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's just so convoluted, the time, and it just feels like we just got back 10 minutes ago. It's very odd.
I know. Does anyone? Let me ask this, folks. Does anyone have plans, engineering plans? And I suppose we can ask Stan for this. For Mr. Peabody's Wayback Machine, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe that would help us. At any rate, speaking of Wayback Machines, we don't have to go that far back to talk about something that is in the news today, and it's important for us, all of us. I mean, you, me, all of us that are living in America, and I believe globally, it has global implications. But, Joe, you pointed this out today, and, of course, we talked about this yesterday during yesterday's program. The jobs report was faked right before the 2012 election. And some people are saying that this is going to become one of the biggest of all Obama scandals. The jobs report right before the 2012 election was faked.
Oh, yeah.
That according to the New York Post. But did we not know this? And, of course, the claims of fraud have been proven true.
Well, see, the election fraud would be the biggest scandal, in my opinion. But
wait. How about the Benghazi fraud? Or the Benghazi...
the IRS targeting.
That too, yeah.
The Benghazi, stand-down orders, the Osama bin Laden raid, and the Navy SEALs that were killed, the Obamacare rollout and lies and the broken promises.
Well, you know what, Joe? Let me ask.
I mean, that's just this term. We could go back to
the
last.
Well, it's all within the last. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's all within since he occupied the White House. But let me ask a question. Apparently, Bill O'Reilly, the sole arbiter of truth on Fox News, has declared that birthers are indeed crazy. You know, that the birth certificate scan. Yes, that was last evening. Oh. And of course, I bow and worship to the man.
I want to know.
Of course, he speaks for all of these rhinos. But here's my question, Joe. If the very people who were giving us grief in 2008, if those very conservative, if those very Republicans, if those very it doesn't matter. The people who had the information that this man, the man occupying the White House, Barry Soetoro, is not who he says he is. He's a creation of the CIA. He is a legend.
If all this would have came out,
if people like O'Reilly and people like Glenn Beck and people like Rush Limbaugh and others who hid behind the microphones, if they did not come out, or if they would have come out, all of the crap that we're facing right now, perhaps, would have been or could have been avoided. Could it not?
No, because Hillary Clinton would be president.
Well, I'll tell you something. At least we wouldn't have this Manchurian candidate, this false individual in the White House right now. And I demand accountability from all of these people who are behind the microphones and who are behind the cameras and who are writing the articles and stories, the bloggers, these purveyors of perverse news stories and these purveyors of the untruths about Barack Hussein Obama, the Kenyan Muslim, the legend of this carefully crafted CIA legend. I demand accountability from these people. I really do. Because I'm going to.
Well, you'll be waiting in line a whole long time for that.
Oh, at least I can. At least something. I am very upset with this because we are being pushed and prodded and poked. And I put a lot of the blame, too, on the Republicans and, in particular, George W. Bush.
George Bush Jr., Jeb Bush,
all
Prescott Bush.
The entire Bush family, because where in the hell were they? Was their allegiance more to the globalist agenda rather than to the American people and their country? They could have stood up and said, something is wrong here. But no.
Yeah, and they could have lost their position of power in the political world too.
I'm sorry for ranting. I don't like to rant. I really don't. But sometimes.
Well, let's jump back to this biggest scandal of the Obama administration. The jobs report was faked right before the 2012 election. As this article from Capitalism Institute says, this will likely become the biggest of all Obama scandals. The jobs report right before the 2012 election was faked, according to the New York Post. In 2012, the unemployment rate dropped suddenly right before the presidential election. Many people, including Alan West, said the numbers were likely manipulated, but the media attacked him. We have a clip here of Alan West in 2012 and exactly what he did say on the air and what was said to him back on October 5th of 2012.
Agrees with Mr. Welsh. Welcome, Congressman West. Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Tyler and Sue. How are you all?
Why do you believe what Mr. Welsh says and not what the Secretary of Labor says?
Well, it's not about believing what Mr. Welsh says. It's about studying the numbers and understanding that I continue to see these inconsistencies. We continue to see revisions of numbers upwards and downwards. And when I look at these numbers and I compare it to the workforce participation rate, which still remains at a 30-year low, when I look at these numbers of the 7.8% and you compare it to the U6 computation, which takes into account the unemployed, underemployed, and discouraged workers, that U6 computation number did not move. It stayed at 14.7%.
But you are alleging not that the data are inconsistent. You are alleging specifically that the president is engaging in a cover-up of the data. You are saying that the administration is actively manipulating that data, correct?
Well, absolutely. Look at what happened with our GDP numbers. Fourth-quarter GDP numbers last year were at 3%. Then they
Do you have any basis on which you say that? Do you have any basis on which you say that? Any source, anyone has come to you and said this is the case? I mean, do you realize how difficult it is? Would it be for someone in theory to pull off that kind of conspiracy, given the number of people in the Labor Department, given the number of surveyors who are out there, one of whom would probably say, hey, wait a minute, that's not the right number?
Well, if you would stop yelling in my ear and allow me to answer your questions, maybe we could get to the bottom of this. When I look at the GDP numbers, which have gone from 4.1%, then it went to 1.9%, then it was at 1.7%. It got revised down just about a month ago to 1.3%. We've got numbers that are all over the place, and we don't understand really the direction this economy is going. When I look on the ground down here where I am in South Florida, here in Palm Beach County, we've got unemployment that's above 9.5%. To the north in Martin County, almost 10%, and to St. Lucie County, it is 13%. So I don't see these numbers that people are talking about, and I don't understand how they can come back later in this month and say that they're revising the numbers from July and August, that they go back and do another survey. So I'm very questionable of what we do see coming out of this administration because the numbers don't add up. Even on Thursday, we had an uptick of the first unemployment jobs, whatever you want to call it, the unemployment request on Thursday. So something is inconsistent here, and that's what I am questioning.
This seems to me, frankly, Congressman, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but this seems as curious in its way, these allegations, as the allegations of Senator Reid a couple of months ago, who said, based on sources he was not willing to name, that he had information indicating that Governor Romney paid no taxes. If this were to be true, sir, Congressman, let me finish my thought. If this were to be true, sir, would you urge that the president be impeached?
Did the workforce participation rate change? No, it's still a 30-year low. Did the U6 computation 14.7% change? No. So how is it that we had a drop of 0.3 of a percentage point on the unemployment rate if these other statistics, which are related to that, do not change? And don't challenge my intelligence, because I tell you, it wasn't too long ago that we were being told that a video was the imminence for this spontaneous attack that ended up killing an ambassador. So there are a lot of questions that come out of this administration. And I'm not talking about impeachment. I just want someone to come clean with the process and the methodology, because there's a...
Okay, there was Alan West from October of last year on CNBC talking about the job numbers and how much they have been manipulated. Well, we have the host of this show talking about how vast a conspiracy it would be to have pulled this off with all the workers in the Labor Department and all the people having access to all these numbers. Wouldn't one person come out and say, this is a cover-up, this is a conspiracy? Well, no. I mean, these people want to keep their jobs. You can get in trouble and prosecuted and go to jail for telling the truth if you're in a government job and exposing information that's not meant for the public. Yeah, you can see how this can be covered up without too much, attention being brought to it. We do have a recent clip of Rick Santilli talking about the rages against media manipulation of the unemployment data allegations. But think about the impact this did have on the election. Not that the election results would have changed the outcome of where we are today, but the fact that this is one of the reasons that the re-election, it was a very close election, and this is one of the reasons that pushed Obama, aside from the fraud and other things, that pushed him over the top.
We'll go ahead and play clip 2 now, and We'll talk more about this.
Hi, Carl. You know, there's a lot of reports out that the census group that's involved in phone surveys, which are part of the household survey, which determines the unemployment rate, well, some of those may have been fake. Now, of course, this is the beginning, and I'm sure investigations will ensue, but it really does raise a very large question. And many question some of the data points before the election. Myself, Jack Welsh, and by the way, Jack, happy birthday. It's Jack's birthday today. But let's play a clip when I was losing most of my temper, but things just didn't feel right. Listen to this soundbite. There was no doubt in my mind a month ago it would be under 8%. There was no doubt in my mind 5 minutes before the number would be under 8%. Take it any way you want.
No, you can't take it any way.
Well, maybe I could have said that in a more calm fashion. I'm calm now. I think the time for shouting is over. But if we only knew now what we knew then really is the theme. Think about what turned or determined the outcome of the election. The economy was huge. What part of the economy was everybody paying attention to? Jobs, jobs, jobs! So, if it turns out that these claims are true, I had a sense it didn't feel right. Jack Welsh definitely had a sense that it didn't feel right. If we knew now what we knew then. And it wasn't only about the economy. It was about health care. It wasn't polling well. It was the reassurances about the unknown. If you want to see what's in it, you have to pass it. It was that unknown that had to be addressed. If you want to keep your doctor, if you want your policy, all the periods, if we knew now what we knew then, would the outcome have changed? I can't tell you that. It's not only about these issues in the election, it's about the Fed. Think about it. It's been 5 years. If we knew now, if before we embarked on giving banks $125 billion, we'd know there'd be a $16 billion settlement, or when one bank bought sloppy banks, it would come back to haunt them, or we'd still see the amount of people out of work for more than 27 weeks where it is. 5 years later, would it have made a difference? I think all outcomes would have changed. How many times has Warren Buffett said, when you wake up in the morning, you're supposed to look at your positions and fall in love with them every day or get rid of them? Think about the logic to that. I don't know how high it up, and we're even forgetting the biggest one, the IRS, okay? Taking the voice away from the conservatives that may have been born in February of 2009, maybe part known as the Tea Party. All of these changed outcomes. America, you really need to think about where we've been and where we're going. In the media, you could do better. Kelly, back to you.
All right, Rick Santilli in Chicago. Coming up.
All right, the very first clip you heard was Alan West from October of 2012, right after the release of the job numbers. And now this clip, the most recent clip you heard, was Rick Santilli from earlier today, talking about the very same issue. Why is this important? It's important because, well, for a number of reasons. The working from the most obvious, of course. You're talking about allegations of fraud. Now, one thing that you've got, folks understand this. There's this great move toward a centralization and consolidation, federalization of everything, otherwise known as socialism. In Marxism, at its core, this is what we're talking about. To create the numbers from this benchmark, 8.1% down to 7.8%, is significant. You might not think it's significant, but it is, for a number of reasons that include the election results and the ability for economists and other talking heads to hang their hat on this particular aspect of our lifestyles, of our collective lifestyles. I guess what I'm saying is this: before the election, remember the Reagan question? Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? The economy is the minds of people all of the time, because we're all working 2 and 3 jobs. If we're not, we're working 16, 18 hours a day. Or we're just trying to make ends meet. We've got 1 mortgage, 2 mortgages. We've got more mortgages than we do houses. If you have a house, generally speaking, you'll have consumer debt. The energy costs are rising incredibly. But the job numbers reflect the growth, the internal inherent growth of a nation.
Yeah, from our gross domestic product to the rise of people getting off unemployment, people getting off of long periods without work, getting back on track, putting our economy back on track. We know that the more unemployment we have, the more hardship we have, the more dependency we have, the more debt we get into. Unemployment numbers lowering equals more people coming out of, lower poverty numbers, means people being able to make a living for themselves without depending on the federal government and subsidy programs, means more taxes being given into the government for, more projects that they deem necessary. But you think they'd want that, but they don't.
Well, not in this socialist Marxist society. And the IRS figures prominently in this. This is tied to the IRS in a number of ways. They've tried to swing, well, they did effectively swing the election toward Obama. But the
swing, steal, potato, potato.
Well, the other thing, too, between the midterm election and the upcoming president, between the midterm election, the previous midterm election, and the last presidential election, the IRS virtually stopped the conservative groups from growing in a manner that is so insidious. I mean, think of it this way. The IRS was used in ways that Nixon never dreamed of. And those of us who were alive and aware of things when Nixon was president, using the IRS as a threat, like a mobster would, a hitman, or a mobster would as an enforcer. This is what's taking place. Now we've got the Chicago mob here in charge, but with a globalist twist, stomping down the Tea Parties, I shouldn't say Tea Parties, the conservatives. But the other thing is this, and no one's talking about it. These job numbers are going to have a direct effect on discussions of amnesty for illegal aliens. Trust me when I tell you this. This is going to be a talking point for the amnesty of the upwards of 20 million illegal aliens. Yes, I said illegal aliens in this country, in the United States. The Marxist attempt here is to balkanize America, is to take and rend our fabric, our moral, or our the demographics of America. It's a very insidious approach, but again, trust me when I say this, these job numbers, the fraud behind it. And I think, too, Joe, and you can chime in on this as well, I do believe, based on my research, I believe that today they had things gone without people like us and people like you, listeners, people who are listening to this program, without spreading this information on social networking sites, without talking to your friends and neighbors about it, without making a fuss. I think that had things gone without a problem, for example, in Syria, and, for example, with the Affordable Care Act. We would be looking at a war in Syria right now, and we would be looking at as well the fast track of illegal amnesty for illegal aliens. But I think, see, that's what they were counting on with this particular number drop with the jobs. I believe that they were padding the way for the illegal amnesty for illegal immigrants, because to show as well that this balkanization would not affect the economy or the job market. What do you think about that, Joe?
Well, as I said, a lot of what we see or we hear about of these scandals, how things would change if things went one way or another, what would be different if the true unemployment rate was, 4.9% like it used to be as a normal versus 8.5%, or however it was before the election. Would it change the overall agenda, planning, leadership? I guess it's hard to comment on.
You're right. It wouldn't change that. But what it does change is the script or the talking points for the talking heads and for the mainstream, lamestream media. That's where it's at.
Absolutely. And think today we're talking about leading off with the manipulation of the job numbers before the election, the fact that some places are calling it the biggest scandal. Maybe that this is something that they put away and use for a rainy day to have people talking about this instead of something else that needs to be addressed today. I mean,
well, that's a good point.
It could work both ways. And, if I could see inside the minds of, these people, how they think and what their agenda is, it certainly would be interesting to get an answer as to why, with a lot of the things and timing, the way that they do things. But regardless, it would have made a difference, I'm sure, in the way voters voted, but possibly not the outcome of the election, as we're talking about a hijacked process.
This was one component of several, and I think I think that this was made to order for the talking heads to add to their script to bolster the image and legacy of Obama in preparation for the re-election. But looking back at the re-election, the 2008 election was stolen, and it was rife with fraud. And
so was the one election.
No, you're correct. I knew you were going to go there. They've all been manipulated. It's been an entire theater for a great number of years, perhaps since Kennedy, and including Kennedy. Perhaps even since 1913 or the early 20th century, all of the elections have been manipulated. I totally agree with that. Yeah. And I agree that, and we've said it so many times here on this program, the candidates are just simply two different sides of the same two-headed coin, which is the two heads are a double phoenix head, or maybe a double goat head, because of their worshiping of their God, not our God. But it's again, the important thing is to realize what's taking place, the chaos and fraud all across the United States in government, and with
being done in the open on purpose.
Very much, yes. We have to look at this, and we call this, as investigators, a continuing course of criminal conduct. And by the way, too, someone had sent me an email about this. It's not that difficult because of the federalization to present incorrect or fudged numbers from these job numbers. All you need, and this is the other important part of this story, you need co-conspirators at the top of, like, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You don't need a lot of cooperation or co-conspiratorial involvement of the people below the head person who releases the numbers, because all of this is compartmentalized. So you really only need a select one or two or a small group of people to accomplish this. So that whoever the interviewer was accusing, what was it, Rick Santelli or Alan West, either one or perhaps both of this grand conspiracy, and it would be impossible to fudge.
Yeah.
No, it's not, because of the consolidation, and that's what it's all about. That's what the Affordable Care Act is all about.
Absolutely. Moving on to another story here, we have big concerns as news coming out of Fort Worth, Texas is shocking here. Drivers in North Fort Worth, Texas on Friday were stopped by a police roadblock and directed into a parking lot. Not police, though, were asking them to do certain things. One was take a breathalyzer test. Two was to give a DNA mouth swab for $10. And three, you could let them take your blood for $50. Now, this was not the police who were committing these checkpoints, but government contractors. We're going to play a quick audio clip for you and then come back to the story. This out of local Fort Worth, Texas, this news clip.
What would you think if police pulled you over and asked for a DNA test? One woman says it happened to her, and she called NBC5 to investigate the suspicious stop. NBC5's Scott Gordon has been looking into the roadblock in Fort Worth.
Kim Cope was on her lunch break Friday driving north on Beach when she came across two police cars with lights flashing.
Yeah, they were about right in here.
She says the uniformed officers directed her into this parking lot.
I gestured to the guy in front that I just wanted to go straight, but he wouldn't let me and forced me into a parking spot.
Once parked, she says she couldn't believe what she was asked next.
They were asking for cheek swabs. They would pay you $10 cash for that. They would also, if you let them take your blood, they would pay you $50 for that.
Or at the very least, she says, they wanted to test her breath for alcohol for free.
It just doesn't seem right that you would be forced off of the road when you're not doing anything wrong.
She says she felt trapped.
I finally did the breathalyzer test just because I thought that would be the easiest way to leave.
We asked Fort Worth and Haltom City Police about this. The parking lot is on the border of both cities, and each department told us they didn't know what we were talking about. So who was doing such a survey and why? We tracked it down to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. The federal agency confirms they're doing this in 30 cities across the country, part of an $8 million survey over 3 years to find out exactly how many drivers are drunk or on drugs. The government insists it's 100% voluntary and anonymous.
You can't just be pulled over randomly or for no reason.
But civil rights attorney Frank Colosi questions whether such stops are constitutional. And then he says there's the fine print on the form given to drivers. It informs them their breath was tested when they first stopped by, quote, passive alcohol sensor readings before the consent process has been completed.
They're essentially lying to you when they say, hey, this is completely voluntary, because they're testing you at that moment.
I don't know, it just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem right that they should be able to do any of it. I mean, if it's voluntary, it's voluntary. And again, none of it felt voluntary at all.
Scott Gordon reporting there now. Fort Worth police are still checking into all this, but so far can't find any record of its officers being involved. We should make it clear the people actually doing the survey were government contractors. The Federal Traffic Safety Administration did not respond to our specific questions.
Wow. So, let me get this straight. People were being forced off the road without committing any violation. No probable cause was involved in...
Well, Joe, let's be more verbally accurate. They were being directed off the road.
Forced directed. I guarantee if they didn't stop, they would be pursued. And at the end of the audio clip there, you heard something I missed that you pointed out to me, Dad, was that their breathalyzers were being done, a passive breathalyzer was being done before they even consented to this 100% voluntary stop, and where they asked for blood or they asked for DNA swabs of the cheek and, at the very least, breathalyzers. Asking for breathalyzers after they already passively, through new technology, had been given breathalyzer tests. This is scary, and you heard what they said, an $8 million grant spanning 30 cities across the country in an effort to reduce impaired driving accidents. And most frightening of all, the cops knew nothing about it, had no record of any officers being there. This was being done by federal contractors.
That's absolutely correct. So here's what we did. What we did was we started tracing exactly what happened, because the story came out of Channel 5, NBC, Dallas, Fort Worth. And in fact, you can find it on NBCDFW.com, which is NBCDallasFortWorth.com. Anyway, that's where this story originated, and it was posted today. But what we did was we investigated on our own. In fact, I had inquired with Dallas Fort Worth what's going on with the authorities there. Exactly where did this originate? Was it scheduled? And nothing was scheduled. There was no notification, at least none anyone is admitting to, with respect to the establishment of any roadblock or road or any type of direction outside of this, or with the knowledge or approval of the Dallas Fort Worth authorities, specifically North Fort Worth. Now, this is a government research study, allegedly, being performed by contractors for the National Highway. Let me get this right here. I just want to make sure I've got this right here. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA. Notice how that flows, NHTSA.
And it's called the National Roadside Survey.
Correct. Now, the NHTSA is headed by David L. Strickland. He's the 14th administrator, and he's the country's top automotive safety official. Now, he was sworn in under Obama on January 4th, 2010, and he is a big advocate for the National Fuel Efficiency Program. He has done a lot to, well, let's just say to nationalize, and here's that word again, nationalize the transportation industry. Looking at his bio, looking at his who endorses him and what he's done. Of course, he's an African American. Not that that makes any difference. Seated in this position, you know what? I shouldn't have even met, but I'm just trying to give you a kind of a picture of who we're talking about here. David Strickland, in his bio, who he is. He in fact, in the NHTSA under leadership is spearheading this research and data analysis in various aspects of highway safety, or under the pretense of highway safety. This is one of the initiatives. But what the NHTSA under Strickland's leadership has done is to grab or to employ subcontractors. They have no authority whatsoever, arresting authority, to in fact use these subcontractors to to stop these people unannounced. And look, the only other thing I want to say about this, and then I'll turn it back to you, is what I would recommend people do. I certainly would not cooperate or give any information whatsoever in a situation like this. I would just not do it.
Can I go now?
Can I go? Am I free to go? And am I under arrest? In this case, of course, or am I being detained, and am I free to go? But in this case, what's really nefarious, the nefarious aspect of this, is that they were using these devices through the open window when you were talking with or having dialogue with the individual that stopped you. They were using, without your consent, in violation of your Fourth Amendment rights, devices to measure your blood alcohol level via your breath.
So the moral of the story is, don't even talk to the people directing you to the checkpoint.
Well,
I mean, really, how and I'm just trying to play this out in my head. You don't know. They said that there were police officers. One witness interviewed said that it was a police officer or a police car that directed her toward the contractors.
I understand that.
You try to avoid those, and it's a police checkpoint. You're going to be arrested for evading. Now,
but, okay.
I guess you would have to. It's a lose-lose situation. There's no way to determine. I guess you're going to be. You unroll the window. You talk to the person who's going to point you in the direction of where they want you to go, so they can conduct these tests. You're already giving up information that you should have to consent to in the first place.
Or they should require your consent. That's correct.
So how do you get even around that? Not roll down your window and talk to the officers? Write down something on a piece of paper and put it up against the window, tell them to leave you alone?
No, you've got to have some sort of interaction. And by the way, one thing I did leave out was the contractor for this particular situation is PIRE, P-I-R-E. That's the, just to be clear here, it's the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation. It is a nonprofit, independent, ostensibly, organization that claims to merge scientific knowledge and proven practice to create solutions that improve the health, safety, and well-being of individuals, communities, and nations around the world. The particular branch that was involved in this specific initiative, if that's what we want to call it, was out of Maryland. Now, I do see some level of, and this is speculation on my part, but I do see some level of cooperation between the TSA and PIRE. The one issue, the one aspect that I could not verify as yet is whether PIRE was in fact hired by the TSA or which branch of the national federal government hired PIRE or the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation. I think it's important for us to follow through with this because we're and the other thing too is I received verification from North Fort Worth that there was no police officer present at the scene. So that brings to the question: what kind of appearance, if we have witnesses saying the police were involved? What's the deal there? Was it a pretext to make it look like a law enforcement stop? You can't have.
Where does it end? Yeah, where will it end?
That's true. That I suppose that's the critical question as well. At what point will it? You're right. Where's this going to stop?
Kay in the chat room says, well, don't drive drunk then. Yes, that is definitely a good word of advice, but we'll just say that you're sober and you're driving down the street and you have a Department of Homeland Security lexicon you're reviewing in your backseat. Now you get pulled over for a possible, drunk drive to test to see if you're under the influence of a substance while driving, and now you have literature, government literature. These things are listed on the FBI's indicators, terrorism indicators. You could have literature of, the Department of Homeland Security or other government agencies in your car. You could have something that they deem. You could have a pencil and paper and a camera. Now all of a sudden you're going to get the, Joint Terrorism Task Force involved. I mean, where does it end? Where does the intrusion end? They stop you for. We've seen it so many times. The search warrants. They're authorized to search, your garage will say. Well, they find a shell casing in your kitchen drawer. The search warrant didn't specify that they were going to be, looking in your kitchen, but then they found something they don't like in your kitchen, so now you're going to be facing charges on that. It's just the intrusion of privacy, the being under arrest as you're freely traveling down a road, like the border checkpoints that are 100 miles inland from the border. There is no rhyme or reason. It violates your constitutional rights. It violates the Fourth Amendment. You have to be stopped. In order to do that, they have to have a probable cause to stop you, and they have to have something specified written if they want to go ahead and search you or take your DNA or take, searching you, your persons, or your papers means your breath is the blood alcohol content of your breath. They need a warrant for that.
Absolutely, and unless they have obvious probable cause, which they wouldn't have to begin with, based on the constitutionality of the stop. But here's where it gets additionally convoluted. The Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation, PIRE, the group that was on the ground in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the senior program director for PIRE previously served at the NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, as the Chief of Research and Evaluation for Traffic Safety Programs. And he was also the manager of the Fatality Analysis Report as far as. Now, while he was an employee, a federal employee of PIRE, he was one of the most vocal proponents of a national blood alcohol standard, putting the BAC at 0.08, trying to make this a national standard rather than a state standard. So you see what's taking place here. You've got this merging between these private entities and the government, the national government, and you've got this revolving door and overlap between the corporate individuals like James Fell, and others, Robert Voas, a senior research scientist with PIRE, who are, you've got this overlap and this exchanging of personnel and this continuity of policy. So all in all, and by the way, this PIRE, do you know that they were financed, they were given over $300,000 in research funding by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Now, in 2008, according to their tax return, PIRE spent over $20 million on salaries and benefits to employees. That same year, it spent roughly $36 million on contribution and grants. The organization had just under $10 million on hand at the end of fiscal year 2008, which is the last time that we had, or that I could find any statistics on them. But so they're getting money from this Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Well, who are they? Well, if you look at their stated mission, it's to improve the health and care of all Americans. Again, it's for the children, right?
Well, I got news on that, too, from a separate story.
Okay.
And two stories
the bottom line, though, let's just say this with respect to that, and I'll close this out. You're looking at a pocket-lining initiative that involves the assault on our Fourth Amendment rights that is fully backed by the national government. States don't have a say in this, and we're seeing states being pushed out of the way.
Yep. Two stories right along those lines. One, a Florida city uproots a couple's 17-year-old garden over new ordinances and regulations. A few things in life are as benign as a home vegetable garden, but for the residents of Miami Shores, Florida, growing veggies can lead you to a fine, the type you cannot afford. That's what happened to the Ricketts and Tom Carroll for the past 17 years. They've grown a garden in the front yard of their modest South Florida home. The backyard, they say, doesn't get enough sunlight, but in May, the city put the couple's garden and any others like it in their legal crosshairs with new zoning ordinances designed to protect the distinctive character of the Miami Shores village was enacted and specifically prohibited vegetables, not fruit trees or even plastic flamingos, from appearing in front yards. Shortly after the couple received a visit from their local code enforcement officer, they were given a choice: uproot the garden or pay a $1,500 monthly fee. They were denied an exemption twice by the Shores Code Enforcement Board, so they decided to dig up their garden. And in another example of government intrusion into private matters, a parent has been fined for not sending Ritz crackers in their kids' lunch and charged $10. It's quite possible that the single stupidest school lunch policy on the planet comes courtesy of a strange interpretation of the Manitoba government's Early Learning Center and Child Care lunch regulations. Apparently, if a child's lunch is deemed unbalanced, where balance refers to ensuring that the lunch conforms to the proportions of the food groups as laid out by Canada's Awful Food Guide, then the child's lunch is supplemented and their parents fined. There's a letter on this article that gives the name of the children. It says what was in their lunchbox: meat, potatoes, milk, carrots, and orange juice, but it was missing one thing, a grain. So the school supplemented with Ritz crackers and charged the parents $5 per child per item that was missing, according to the Canadian Food Guide, effective April 22nd. This is what we're seeing here in America, too, as I have talked to people who have had their lunches, their children, taken away, and their schools given them something they deemed healthier than what was sent with the students. But this lady sent her children to daycare with lunches containing leftover homemade roast beef, potatoes, carrots, and orange, and some milk. But she did not send any grains. So as a consequence, the school provided her with the grains and a $10 fine. So how far is this going to go? I mean, how much of an intrusion, how much of this are we going to see? We saw a lot last year. We're seeing more this year.
This was out of Canada, or where was this out of?
Manitoba, Canada, yes.
Okay. What we're seeing, and I think that there's a couple of different important aspects to this story that we're not going to hear on the evening news. What we're seeing, or from others even, if you look at what's taking place in Canada, and I've spoken with Ginny McLeod about this, the founding editor of Canada Free Press, .com. If you look at what's taking place there, you're looking at, once again, the Eurocentric, the pushing of this Eurocentric style, philosophy, ideology, in America as well.
The ideology that the government, that the power elite know what's best for your children rather than you. I mean, they want to dictate what is healthy for your children. They want to dictate what your children can and can't eat, and they are better parents than you. Therefore, they, I guess we just need to do what Melissa Harris Perry from MSNBC said, and just get used to the idea that the children are not ours, that they're part of the communities or the states. Maybe that's the idea. Maybe that's what we're missing here. The idea that our kids are ours, I think we need to let go. I think we need to understand that the kids are part of the state's plan. They are there to serve the state. Therefore, the state will keep them healthy as they deem fit. Parents cannot intrude on that plan.
When you were growing up, perhaps that would have been a good thing. I could have turned you over to the state and let them raise you into their, let them mold you. But isn't it odd, or isn't it oddly important that there's this assault taking place not only on our all of our rights under the Bill of Rights, but isn't it interestingly odd that the national, the laws of the United States or the administration of the United States is actually targeting our children now. Now they've done this in the past, but what they're doing now is it's kind of a multi-level assault. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And excuse me for not being as articulate as I should be. The initiatives, the programs, the assaults, the plots and plans of these people are to take aim at our children at multiple levels. Don't forget, you've got the federal government pushing the state municipalities to, for example, to enforce health code laws that would prohibit young people from opening lemonade stands, young people from engaging in various endeavors, as well as directing the schooling, the education, the policies, the Common Core, for example. It's a federal program that is to be implemented on the local level. You've seen this increase. This is so important for people to understand what the federal government is doing. This is really the socialization. This is what the, dare I say it, what the Nazis attempted to do and had done successfully in Germany in the 1930s. They went after the children. They created this group through their policies, this youth group, through their policies and procedures. Don't look at it as merely a one-off lunch program gone awry. I mean, this is not something that's an isolated incident. People here in the United States are experiencing this with their children at their schools, where their lunch bags are inspected. Yeah. And if the lunches aren't up to par by their standards, what do? They send them home, or they
replace the lunch in charge of parents. And we've seen that, like I said, with friends of the show that we talked to. They've had more than one children on more than one occasion this has happened to. It is absolutely unreal, the level of intrusion. I mean, of all the things to care about, you're not worried about the kids, being on drugs or making sure their curriculum and their homework's up to date. You're worried about their food, and it's not like the parents are sending kids to school with, a piece of bologna and a half-eaten carrot. They're sending them to school with actual meals, and they're still having to get these letters, these fines, these student Nazis, student teacher Nazis saying, look, your lunch is not up to par. I have on my checklist mandated by the government, so therefore we're going to have to replace it and or, supplement your student's lunch. I mean, where does it end? Are they going to start sending kids home that don't have the right shoelaces? Are they going to start sending kids home?
They've done that for clothing, for attire.
Home school. Well, if you can.
I would also add this. Please, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this and if you have children, do what you must to take this on. I mean, if you're listening to this program, investing your time, then, and if something like this has happened to you with your child, or even, it's a little different with grandchildren, but with your child, please take the initiative and don't allow it. Fight back. In other words, go to your school, your child's school, and you demand to see the person in charge, the principal, making these decisions, or whoever that individual would be. Ultimately, I believe it would be the principal, but going up from there, the school board, the administrator of the school board. Please, folks, do not accept this behavior. Do not tolerate this behavior. We must push back. Now, that doesn't mean being an idiot. Okay, I'm not suggesting that, throwing things and calling names. What I'm saying is we must have a very measured response, a very methodical response. We must push back. We must say, we're not going to accept this. You cannot do this. And we must do it together. We must do it as one, collectively. And if you're listening to this program, and God bless you, Karen, in Rome, for example, and other people in other parts of the world, if you're experiencing this in other parts of the world, depending on how the law is set up there, push back. Don't take it lying down. Do not accept this.
Might have to shove.
Well, sometimes. Before we go to the break, I just want to point this one thing out. Thanks, RW, for the email. With respect to the traffic stops, it is called unlawful detainment under the color of authority. The use of flashing lights is critical. Now, in this article, in the story, in the accounts here, it's somewhat unclear what color the flashing lights were. Are they blue? Are they yellow? Are they red? Or one requires, for example, blue or yellow. One requires that you stop, and the other is merely an advisory. And also, the signage is critical as well. There should have been clear signs that describe that the checkpoint is voluntary. But like the IRS, the compliance is based. Think about the IRS. Compliance with the IRS is based on sections of the tax code that stipulate voluntary compliance. But the Hagmann Report on this Tuesday, the 19th day of November 2013 edition. With us is our good friend, the real Indiana Jones, as I like to call him, author of Cosmic Conspiracy, and a gentleman who has a resume that would put so many people to shame. In fact, if not the smartest, one of the smartest, most intelligent individuals I know, Mr. Stan Dale. Everyone stand up and clap for Mr. Dale. There we go. All right. You in the third row. Hey, stand up. Stan, we got this guy in the third row over here. We got to stop him upside the head. He's not standing up. No. Anyway.
Get him. Well, I thank you for that kind introduction, but I think we're probably a few more resumes more impressive than mine. I'm just an ordinary guy, but a few extraordinary things, I suppose.
Well, indeed you have. Man, I'll tell you, it's always on Tuesdays. In the run-up, we always get people saying, I can't wait for tonight. I can't wait to hear what Stan's got to say. It doesn't matter the subject. I just want to hear what your thoughts on everything that's going on. So where is your radar pointed tonight? Where are you most interested in? And I know that we have... by the way, your website is standale.com, folks. Go ahead right now and...
did you get that
I
link?
did.
Okay.
I did, and it's not working for me.
Not working for you.
Yeah. It's for show images.
I understand what it is. I understand.
Okay.
While we're talking here, I'll get that over to you. I understand what's causing that. I just put in the wrong directory here.
What we'll do, Stan, is, and listeners, what we'll do, those listening live can go to HomelandSecurityUS.com in about, give us 2 minutes, and the link will be up to the show images that Stan will be referencing tonight. So go ahead, Stan.
There are several subjects I want to talk about. Some relating physics and statement about God and the spirit and how everything is held together by him. I realized from the experiments that I videotaped in my lab here a few years back that I was seeing something that explains how we are sustained by something magical, scientific, but still rather an interesting revelation. I hadn't realized this until I was, in the shower, soaking up all those good vibes from those vibrating heads and warm water, and I thought, hey, that's an interesting thought. I'll have to talk about that in the show. And we'll talk about that, and then about some ancient stupas in India, the Sanchi stupa, and the secret propulsion message hidden in it, and or even part of creation in it as well. And then a bit about what I've been doing here, some ideas I've been kicking around on a no-moving part electrical wind generator. And I suppose for those that haven't heard the tale, we can talk about some of that Indiana Jones stuff that I did over in the Qumran region near the Dead Sea in Israel a few years back with real Indiana Jones, Dr. Vendel Jones. And that's all kind of interesting stuff. And then there's a few questions from our listeners that they've emailed in ahead of time. So I'll need to address those, that's for sure. So what do you any of those things strike you as, let's talk about that first?
Well, one emailer sent an interesting question on Comet Ison, and if you want to get into the comet and what we should be expecting or seeing from it here, and we can get into this listener's question. It has to do with the convergence of energy by HAARP and Tesla technology plasma rays. Can they make or change the size and the brightness of the comet? Is the question. No? Okay.
No. It's too far away, and the people attribute too much power to the HAARP array. And although it might resonate our ionosphere and produce some pretty spectacular things there, it's not going to affect something that large, traveling that fast. probably 80 million miles away from us. I mean, that's just kind of a big reach, isn't it? Sorry, but
yeah.
no.
And they're saying the tail of Ison is now 12 times larger than the sun, I think.
Yeah.
And we know it's going to be making it's what, in about 9 days scheduled to make its way around the sun. And
9 to maybe 15 days, and 9 to 2 weeks, somewhere in that region, I think they said.
Yeah, we keep every week. We've been keeping track of this, seeing if anything's been changing. Has there been anything that you've seen with the comet that has concerned you or made you think that it was going to, break up, maybe get brighter? Anything that has changed with the comet or with the surroundings of the comet that will change its trajectory or what they plan on it doing?
So far, it's doing what we've all expected, and I assume that it will continue that way. But what I'm seeing as far as streamers running out behind it does indicate that it has a strong probability of breaking up as it passes around the backside of the sun. We will certainly know one way or the other very shortly, and so yeah, it's not the only bright comet out there within view from the Earth, but there are several others out there, and Ison's the one that's probably going to be the most impressive in the immediate future as it passes around the sun. Let's wait and see. I mean, we're getting some very nice photos. I think if Holly didn't put it up today, she will put it up shortly. It's up today. It's all eyes on Ison's tail, and it is an absolutely stunning photograph. You just go up to standeo.com and get past the front page there where it says to click here to go to the main site and look at the image today, number 1. And it is just, something that tells you there's a lot of stuff boiling off of that comet, which would indicate to me there may be a very strong possibility that it will fissure and break up and, come as several pieces around the other side of the sun. Anyway, have a look there if you get a chance. I don't know whether it's going to be the big thing that people are worried about, but anyway, we'll see.
The tornadoes that we saw tear through Illinois and Indiana was about 80 tornadoes, some F4 in strength, 160-some mile-an-hour wind, 190-mile-an-hour winds in some places we saw. How rare of an outbreak was yesterday's tornado spree?
Oh, pretty uncommon. Purely by the sheer numbers of them in that wide front moving across to the northeast. If you watched the news, it was interesting. I mean, it leveled a whole pathway right through houses. One side of the street would be left totally intact, and right across the street, everything would be flattened. And this speaks to the nature of a tornado, no matter how big it is or what its rating is. The major damage of a tornado is in the wall of the tornado, not just in the center. In fact, in the center of a tornado, like about 95% of it, there's warm air flowing down from the cloud and hitting the ground beneath it, flowing downwards. Yet, as it spins, hits the dirt and spins back up to the cloud, there's a thin wall formed, and that wall is where the vacuum is and the horizons. And there is where you see like a scythe, a circular scythe just sawing through, the neighborhoods, and that's why it can hit one side of the street, one house, and miss the one next to it, because that only the portion, the outer edge, the outer, circle of the tornado actually does the cutting and damage. Because a farmer over in Oklahoma years ago, probably half a century ago now, he was out in the paddocks there, and the storm came up before he could get back to the safe place, and a tornado jumped and came down right over the top of him. He saw it coming down. He couldn't run anywhere, and he prepared to meet his maker there and hunkered down on the ground on his back looking up at him. And he saw lightning flashing between the sides of the tornado up inside, but he felt moist, warm air like a shower coming down on him. And, it wasn't windy, like spinning him around or anything. He was just laying there getting this nice, moist, warm air shower. But if the tornado had not done what it did next, he wouldn't be here to tell us that, or he wouldn't have been able to tell it when he did. The tornado, just as suddenly as it dropped on him, lifted straight up and bounced over somewhere else. Therefore, the cutting edge of it didn't rip him apart in the dirt underneath him. So that's how we know that this kind of a characteristic path, like very thin circles that go along the path of the tornado, and those circles are cutting right down into the dirt because of the extreme, sharp, high-speed winds and that thin wall of the tornado that do all the cutting. Okay. Anyway, it is a rare event, and there have been a lot of them. A lot of the tornadoes in this last few days. I don't think this is the end of it. I think all of us, no matter where we live, whether we live in tornado as such, will probably see some increasing high winds with even microbursts dropping down out of the jet stream area periodically to wreak havoc on the surface of the earth, just as part of this horrible imbalance of the heat machine that makes our climate and weather.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and that kind of storm cells, those storm cells and those kind of outbursts of tornadoes are reminiscent of, middle to late March, early in the spring in the tornado season. You have to see them here, getting closer to winter. Very, not concerning, but just it's an eye-opener as we see these trends of weather patterns happening out of season, very out of season at times, and something that, we always need to be prepared for, because anymore, we could have a hurricane in January. We can have tornadoes in March. In Thanksgiving, we can have snow in July anymore. It does not seem to be, such a surprise when we see these types of events happening out of time. It's got
to be a worry, though. It's got to be a worry, because a number of issues other than the sun alone may be causing this, with the potential of the Earth's magnetic field, magnetic poles shifting to a new, vastly displaced point. The spin axis of the planet may wobble or continue to wobble. I've seen it doing it. The planet itself may be expanding. And so you put all these things together. Don't worry about HAARP and that kind of stuff. The amount of energy that could be put up in the atmosphere from that is a micro speck compared to what is happening on a planetary scale and a stellar scale with our sun.
Yeah.
So all these things are a problem to consider.
Another thing, a listener and friend of ours and a friend of yours, and this is up on your website, the tumbleweed troubles. Have you got a chance to check this out, Stan, the tumbleweed problem in Colorado Springs?
Well, yes. It's not limited to Colorado Springs. It's worse east of us in the plains of Colorado, east of the Rockies. But we've got to go out here and have a big bonfire and get rid of all the stuff that caught on our fences. We're not as hard hit as some of those places where they had them nearly 2 stories high, stacked up around their homes and trucks and stuff.
Yeah,
it's magnificent.
New to me, this story. I did not catch this earlier, and I want to thank Dawn and Chris for getting my attention on this. But it says, southern Colorado being plagued by this Russian import. Nasty brushes piled themselves 2 stories high and made roads impassable. Now, how strange is this to see in your area any time of the year?
Well, it's something we see from time to time. I remember 4 or 5 years ago we had a sudden upsurge of them. And climate change or weather changes, I guess maybe climate be a more appropriate word, but anyway, these changes happen periodically. Produces a lot more of the Russian thistle or tumbleweed. And then we get the winds, and the winds, of course, take the dry bush, and it's airborne, and you'll see them sailing through the skies and across the highways. And you just kind of got to get used to them hitting your windscreen as you drive down some of the major highways, and not be, frightened or distracted by them when they hit your car or your windscreen. They won't stop you or anything. I mean, they crunch up real easy when you drive over them. But this is something you kind of get used to here in Colorado, and I think some of the neighboring states north and south of us, where the Russian thistle has taken hold. I mean, this stuff, when it tumbles across the prairie and the homes and stuff, drops seeds all along the way, and of course, and they are just so aggressive, they just spring up. You know, the next wet season they grow, and then they dry out, and then they spread their seeds on down in the path of the wind. It's something that ranchers, farmers, and people here in the burbs, near the lake, we all have to deal with it, and you just get used to it. It's just a nuisance, time consumer.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I've never seen a tumbleweed in real life, so if you guys obviously have a bunch of extra ones, you can send one our way, so we can check it out and roll them down the street and scare the neighbors.
Oh, with pleasure. What's your address? Do you need a liftgate truck, or do we just drop it on your lawn?
You can send them however you can get them here. No, the people that we talk to in Colorado are saying how much of a disaster this is. Their horses are up in 4 feet of this stuff. They can't find their cars. I mean, this is it must be horrible.
It is, especially with the horses. If you're riding them, and put weight on them, and they're at a bit of a gallop or whatever trot, they could, a prairie dog hold or something like that and break an ankle, or
Yeah.
So yeah.
Tumbleweed doom is better than radiation doom, I guess, or tornado doom, but still something that is a nuisance.
Irritation. It's a minor irritation compared to everything else we're faced with.
Yeah.
And one of the other threats we have to existence is the White House and the team behind it. Dearie me.
Too bad the tumbleweeds couldn't hide that thing.
Yeah,
that'd be interesting. Okay, in other news, we have the sinkhole in Louisiana brings mini earthquakes and explosion fears. Now, this is something that we've followed since the beginning, but haven't really gotten into much of the news surrounding the sinkhole. We know that sinkholes continue to plague America as they're popping up all over the place, becoming a new phenomenon of danger. But now scientists are saying that they need to monitor this sinkhole in Louisiana that has forced hundreds to evacuate and is increasing the seismic activity and creating mini earthquakes. What are mini earthquakes?
Well, they're earthquakes, maybe 1.5 Richter and smaller, that you can hardly feel, but they are a nuisance and a worry because they are indicative of other activity beneath the surface. And in a dive-pure assault dome, you worry about that because enough of that can crack it and let seawater come in and then just erode it out until the whole land sinks. I think this Coin Bayou thing is a thin end of the wedge. I really believe we're going to see a lot more of these stretching clear over to the panhandle of Florida and down into Florida itself as the changes occur. Part of the change, I think, are the stretching of the Earth's surface in a partial expansion that's underway now. And I think we might be able to see the Mississippi certainly widening its reach, its coverage in the south there on the east of Louisiana, in the west of Mississippi. In essence, there's a very strong possibility that if this expansion of the Earth's crust continues, the New Madrid fault will release, and that we'll have a waterway from the Great Lakes down to the Gulf of Mexico, and a lot of Louisiana go underwater.
Your map, I think you took in your book, you took a Navy map, what they said how the Earth would look or how America would look after something of what you just described would happen. And you created a map also, I believe, on how the Earth would look or the United States would look, having a waterway from the Great Lakes down to through the Mississippi River. And we see the sinkholes increasing in Florida. We know that, the one gentleman was swallowed up while he was sleeping and killed by the sinkhole. There was another one in Disney World. I mean, these things are continuing to pop up, although not as rare as they were 1 year ago. They are still creating havoc, in Ohio. I mean, we can just sit here and list the states. And the New Madrid fault line is an area of huge concern for so many people. The Department of Homeland Security actually did an emergency study, disaster and mitigation response plan to the New Madrid fault line, and the nuclear reactors along those fault lines. That is something we need to be concerned about because there seems to be a very high amount of nuclear reactors built right along that fault line.
Yeah, they keep doing silly things. You got to wonder about it. I'm sending you or your dad, whoever's got the email thing going into a moment, a link to those maps you're talking about that I made of the United States, because it's on our website, and it's in full color and high resolution. You can click on that, and you can see have the states listed there, outlined, and you can see that Louisiana will probably suffer, either more or the same as Florida in the water intrusion level should we have rising sea level, or should the terrain area start to sink. And this, to me, that's probably a bigger probability than anything, is that the Louisiana area there is sinking. And if you imagine that you've got salt domes, where they point upwards, and these are being eroded by water flow and by other chemicals that we've been pumping down into, to store toxic waste and that kind of stuff. If you look at that as supporting the land, a lot of the land down in the bayou country, and already the bayou country is, very close to water level, then it wouldn't take very much at all for the erosion of these salt domes in the area to cause massive collapses and hence big sinkholes, and they would take with them the surface there in Louisiana, regardless of whether we have a New Madrid Fault. The conversion at that time, this is a real and present danger. And I don't know, Joe, maybe I would say this to your dad, Doug, remember when we were kids, we never heard about sinkholes in the quantity we're talking about here. I mean, it's not a big item. And this is here in America. It's not because we're tied in with the Internet to more news services worldwide. We would have heard more about this if it were happening with such frequency in the old days when you and I were kids. But anyway, it is increasing, and it is not a pleasant thing. It's not a clever thing, and real estate values are suffering and will continue to suffer as more and more people begin to realize this is not going to go away. This is an increasing problem.
It certainly is. Yeah, I never remember. Those that were responsible, the sinkholes that were caused by sewer lines collapsing, or underground lines collapsing, even in the 70s. I remember responding when I worked as a paramedic, responding to a collapse of a street because of the underlying sewage and water pipes. The fry. It was a weather-related event. An aged infrastructure, and somebody had fallen down into this pretty large hole, and we actually rappelled down into the hole. Boy, if I could do that again. But beyond that, I've never seen anything like this before.
Look in South America, Mexico, and some of these places where they have these big pools of water that are circular. They go way, way, way down deep, and there are some in the oceans that are not obvious. They're just around atolls and things like that. They have happened obviously before, where a volcano has occurred, or whether an erosion has occurred in the limestone, but ages past. We're not talking about recent events. So this is something that is new and a clear and present danger to the population of not only the United States, but to Central America, to China. It's happening all over the planet, which gets back to the point. I think this is because the planet is expanding.
Is one area, geographically speaking, more prone to this than another, sinkholes activity?
Well, I think that we will find this, because if you imagine the Earth has a very dense core that is spinning around faster than the surface of the Earth is. And there's a gap space between the core, some magma fluid spaces or whatever between the mantle and the core. So if the Earth's core starts to move, remember, everything is spinning, and so it will be asymmetric. It will cause the core to push more toward one part of the planet than the other, depending upon what time this anomalous spin of the Earth begins. So the intensity of it. So it could, like I think happened, it could go up under the Atlantic and cause that to rise up, and then we could see one go up maybe under the Hawaii and push that the Pacific plate down underneath the west coast of the United States. The expansions that we're seeing on the planet from past ages show that there was a bulge more in one place than the other, which caused some plates to push under others and others to pull apart. So I don't know where it will be now. Certainly in the United States, in the low-lying water coastlines and up the Mississippi and west coast, certainly in the San Joaquin Valley area and that area, not only are we looking at sinkholes, but the possibility of a massive earthquake and series of smaller earthquakes along the west coast causing subsidences and dropping below sea level of large portions of the California coast and possibly part of Oregon. In fact, one lady wrote in, and she has a brother lives up in Spokane. This is one of your listeners, BJ, and she was telling about noises he'd heard up there, and that they weren't like any sound he'd ever heard. He knows the difference between aircraft and whatever, but it was a low rumbling noise, and well, I say low, but it was also loud. It was a low frequency, but loud, strong rumbling, and it was rattling houses and everything. And it, it just wasn't flights of aircraft or B-52 squadrons or anything like that flying over. There is something happening on the West Coast, and Spokane, Washington is real close to the Juan de Fuca plate, which is building up about a 9 to 9.5 earthquake, has been for the last 55, 56 years. They know that's going to release sometime soon. And it might be this is beginning to weaken for whatever reason, and that fault line running under the Cascadia range there may be causing these rumbles as things start to crumble down underneath, the mantle down underneath the surface down a few miles down. There's a lot of this strange sound stuff going on that I think we can attribute to changes in the Earth's diameter and to the atmosphere.
Very disconcerting to look at it. Of course, these are the signs, in my view, the signs of the times. Stan, and ladies and gentlemen, I just want to let you know, for the purpose of tonight, if you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, that's our website, HomelandSecurityUS.com, the very top, Tuesday, Stan Dale on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, embedded right there on the front page. You don't have to do anything but click on the links. There are 2 links here. The first one, click here for show images, which is Stan's physics discussions. And then the second link is click here for show images, water levels. So, Stan, those pages, the links to your images are up. Just to let you know.
Okay. Now, if you go to that link, if you've got those links up, if you go to the one that goes to Stan's physics discussions, there's a couple of the topics that I think are interesting to talk about. Have you ever seen any of these ancient alien shows with that guy with the crazy hair, that Sukalos guy on the dish or the TV called Ancient Aliens?
No, I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. I got a
Joe,
neighbor
have you seen any of those?
No, I have not.
Gosh. Well, there's a ton of them on one of the channels that we watch, History or something like that. And they've been going on for several years now then, and they explore the ancient alien astronaut hypothesis theory, that the gods were ancient astronauts in ancient times. Well, I was watching one of them here the other night after we quit for the day, and they were showing some of these, magnificent stupas, which are like domes made of stone in India, and one particular one called the Sanchi Stupa. That's S-T-U-P-A. And I was watching as they zoomed in on the front of this temple, this round, hemisphere, and in the front of it there was this 3-tiered column of images. And when I looked at it, I saw something that I recognized immediately, and that was this: the column in the front of it there, the column on the extreme left and right edges had scrolls, like like a cinnamon roll type thing. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I play with smoke rings, and I filed a patent which showed a pattern similar to this. And then I looked between on the top level there, if you're looking at it on the website, on the left side where there's a scroll on the top, I went across to the right side, top again, scroll on the right side, and I looked in between them, and the arch was curved. I thought, well, what does that mean? That looks like a cutaway of a smoke ring, like I had in my patent. And so I thought, well, all right, let's turn this stupa upside down and see if it looks like my smoke ring curls in the patent application I made. If you click the next image on the right of that, you'll see that same image upside down, and you will see it is as though the smoke ring moving up toward the top of the screen now, the center portion bends in, and the three pillars are like pathways as well underneath it. So then you look at the next picture I've got, which is of my smoke ring, the cutaway for the patent, and you see scrolls left, right, and you see how it bends in the middle as the smoke ring moves forward. The same thing. Now, this is a secret, a huge secret, to a number of things in physics, but also into advanced propulsion techniques where you can go faster than the speed of light. And so when I saw that stupa in that show, I said I grabbed my iPad, clicked the screen, and then went looking for it on the internet so I could get a better picture of it. And I think they were talking about a god who came to Earth and dealt with the people in India then, and shared technology and genetic experiments with them, that kind of stuff. But it just seemed to be too coincidental that they would be next to a dome-shaped thing like a saucer, I guess, but a dome saucer with this like historical thing out the front showing not only the curl of the smoke rings or the energy rings, but also massive information about the history, perhaps of mankind, the different life forms, the winged lions, lions with wings that were part of some kind of experiment, and even beings that had wings themselves that were riding on horses. You can see all this if you just zoom the picture up. And then, there's stylized images of all kinds of things going, including some, I guess, I don't know who they are, some leaders or something, rulers. In one part that I saw, they were looking over a balcony of something that was up in the air, and they were looking down at everything. So they'd been taken for a ride by somebody up high, into the sky. Anyway, I just find this extraordinary because there are several of these stupas with the same kind of motif in the historical thing out the front, this three-leveled tier. The smoke ring thing there is something we can talk about another time, but I have done many years of research and testing in the labs with smoke ring phenomenon to see how we could go faster than the speed of light, how we could increase normal aircraft speed without making a sonic boom, and certainly that would happen. Even if you look at that picture of the stupa right side up, there's a three-tiered gizmo up on the top. It's like an antenna or some kind of a field focus device, which could very well be producing the type of toroidal or smoke ring shaped waves in the environment of the air or space. So that's just something I wanted to share with you. You guys can look at it later at your leisure.
Very interesting. Okay. And folks, again, the images, and these will be here for those listening on the archive as well, accessible via HomelandSecurityUS.com, and all you have to do is just look at the top story, or if you're listening to this via archive, Tuesday, Stan Deo and the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, and it's right there in front of you, all of the images. Please visit standeo.com to take a look at these. Very interesting. Stan, if I can back up just a little bit, two questions that are kind of similar, both from listeners. One from Glenn. Let me hit that one first. Are you familiar with Neil Adams and his theory of the growing Earth and the universe? Of course, you've spoken about the growing Earth, but specifically Neil Adams and his theory?
Yeah, I've talked with Neil. I was, of course, there from my physics, understanding of cosmology a long time ago. But when I discovered his stuff on the internet, I, immediately recognized the value of it and talked to him about it and his theories. And although we don't agree entirely upon the cause of the expansion, we both agree there is expansion. And if you will, let's see, where is it on that site there? I'm just finding, On that same link to the stupas and the smoke ring stuff, scroll down to the bottom of that page. And if you have trouble for some reason later in the archives getting to this, just go to standeo.com to our main news site, which is down one page from the front, and you'll see a microphone up toward the top of the page on the right that says Show Images. And from there, you can get to these things by clicking on hollow planets or that kind of stuff. And there you will see one whole line, just one line from the bottom, linking to Neil Adams' descriptions and animations. He's a comic book artist by profession, but he developed a way to use that talent to shrink or expand, in this case, to expand the moon, Mars, the Earth, a moon of I think it's Jupiter, to show them expanding, and the evidence of the fact they've expanded greatly, like in some cases by a third of their normal diameter as they aged. And you can see this right before your eyes as it happens. They're animations or movies. So, and you can also find this by going to like YouTube and just typing in YouTube Neil Adams Earth or Neil Adams growing or expanding, and it will take you to where these various animations are.
Okay. Wow. All right. Very good. Very good.
I was just checking that out. I don't know whether it came through the mic or not, but
yeah. It did.
Okay. Sorry about this.
Our very special friend Margot from Oklahoma also wants to know, and these are kind of, if I can back up just a tad here to readdress Comet ISON. And, of course, we've talked about James McCanney before. Now apparently, according to Margot, Mr. McCanney, Professor McCanney believes that the electromagnetic interaction of ISON and Mercury will be significant, at least according to Margot. What do you think about that? And do you think that perhaps some of the increased earthquake activity in the area of Oklahoma, in surrounding that area, could be the result of anything with anything at all with ISON? And
I think it's probably more of a local issue related to our orbit and to the expansion of our planet and to the expansion of the solar system itself, the sun itself, as time passes. The ISON phenomenon, I think probably the electrodynamic or electrostatic forces from the comet ISON will have more effect on Mercury and its orbit than its electromagnetic or magnetic field type things or gravitational field. I could be wrong, but I am familiar with Professor McKenney's work, and I do support quite a bit of what he says, if not all of it. But preceding him was the work of Immanuel Velikovsky in Worlds in Collision and Earth in Upheaval, and he linked Earth events, like earthquakes and various severe changes during the exodus, to the passage of perhaps the planet Venus as it jumped from an outer orbit it had down into the orbit it presently takes, and as it passed close enough to Earth to cause the damage, and possibly to close enough to Mars or the planet that used to occupy what is now the asteroid belt, to break it up.
Okay.
Their science, their physics, their cosmology, those two guys, in my opinion, hold much more credibility than what they teach us in the universities.
Okay.
Very good.
A few questions, one back to Louisiana, both dealing with water. One, a listener has family in the Lake Charles area and wanted to know, we'll say, a scenario of the New Madrid fault line, cracking and water flowing from the Great Lakes to Louisiana. What people around Lake Charles, would they be underwater? I guess the question would be, are they in danger in their current location?
I don't know. It's going to depend on a lot of factors that I just would have to use a crystal ball to determine. Certainly Louisiana and parts of Mississippi are at risk because they're so close to sea level of subsidences and earthquakes, and because they are in very moisturized soil, the liquefaction factor of earthquakes could make shock waves travel all through Louisiana, Mississippi, more so than the high plains of Texas. I have a son and his family that live in Shreveport, up in the northern part of the state. If I had my brothers, I'd move them out of there and into the the high desert here or somewhere here in Colorado, but that's not practical with their jobs and things and family. But I just think that you can see from that water level map on my site that Doug has put the link up to. You can see that if we had the ice at the poles and some of the water down underneath in what's called the Moho discontinuity were forced up into the oceans, that the sea level rise could be between 200 and 500 feet easily. And in those cases, most of Louisiana and parts of Mississippi and all of Florida would be underwater. If it were me and I were asked, would you live in the Lake Charles area? Would you live anywhere in Louisiana, or Mississippi or in East Texas or Southeast Texas? I'd say probably not. If I had my druthers, I'd find some other place in about, 4,000 or 5,000 foot altitude and not on the coast, West Coast or East Coast. So that's just me.
Okay, and the East Coast. Another listener question goes along to say this. There's been a lot of preparation and buildup of FEMA on the East Coast, preparing for possible East Coast disaster. If a tsunami were generated from the Canary Islands, how far inland is it predicted to come? And I know we've covered this before, but in some of your maps, the show images, if you go to the website homelandsecurityus.com and you go to the maps, water maps, it does show, from sea level rises, what parts of the U.S. would be underwater. Florida, parts of Georgia, South Carolina. But if this was a Canary Island generated tsunami, what kind of damage could we be looking at on the East Coast?
Well, in that image we're talking about there on my website, the darker blue areas would probably be underwater first. Let me just think. Yeah, they would be underwater first. So if you look along that coastline, and you can have two views of that water level map, one with the state lines drawn in and one without the lines, so you don't have the red lines get in the way of seeing what color or how deep the shoreline is there. We're pretty certain that if the Canary Island landfall, the slippage on Cumbre de Vieja does occur, that the majority of the impact will hit Georgia, South Carolina, northern Florida, perhaps most of Florida's eastern sea coastline. However, portions of it will hit up as far as New Jersey, Rhode Island, up in that area. I would assume that the surge, which will travel at 400 to 600 miles an hour, will go inland into these darker areas, the darker blue areas, but not so much into the lighter blue areas. And it will probably only travel inland about 50, 60 miles. I'm just guessing at the surge because of the factors, whether you look at what goes up into D.C., up into, like Maryland, New York, and these areas, there are shapes of water bodies intruding into the coastland, and these will focus the wave, depending on what angle the wave hits at, up further inland and cover more distance than it would, say, on just a flat coastline. But because I think the Cumbre de Vieja tsunami will be aimed more at South Carolina, coming in from the upper right, heading towards South Carolina and Florida, I think the sheer direction of that will preclude the wave pushing up into the waterways up into, say, Pennsylvania, up toward Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, in that area. And also, I think New York will be fairly safe too. But it's not to say there won't be some surge there, but it'll be kind of directed in a manner that won't cause inland surges at high levels, in my opinion.
Okay. Wow. Well, interesting. A little different than what I thought. Yeah. However, and folks, this is a plug, I would say, for Prudent Places USA, because among the maps there, the 800 maps, of course, you've got in the research done, questions that are being asked like this can certainly be answered in greater detail through Prudent Places USA. Stan, I've got want to thank Sandy for this. Barb had asked about this, and other listeners to our show. You know, the tsunami buoys that we have around the world, specifically the ones that are monitored or dispatched and maintained by NOAA, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. Have they been turned off, or they experience some downtime? What's the deal with that?
You do have maintenance downtime with buoys. The Navy uses a lot of them, and they have to be maintained periodically for various problems that occur. I looked at the buoy maps, the site for that she, either her or someone else sent me, and there were a lot of yellow, which means currently active buoys, all along the West Coast, the East Coast of the United States, down into the Southwest Pacific. I think that what I saw there did not convince me that they turned them off. It appears that they're still data gathering, and if you'd like to correct me on that and send me where it says that they are, not so numerous or that they're turned off, I'd appreciate that. But for the life of me, I couldn't see, that the buoys were turned off. Maybe I'm wrong, but anyway.
Yeah, I try to follow that up on my own. From an investigator standpoint, trying to follow the images, the directions, the monitoring of these buoys. And frankly, I didn't even know they existed until I received the first email, which was, a couple of days ago. But I couldn't find any verification authenticating the fact that these were turned off. Now, like you, I could be totally wrong, and I know less about this than you do. But because I would come to you with a question like this. So if you're saying that you didn't find any indication that they were inoperative, then of course, but I would urge Barb, Sandy, and others, if you have direct information about this, please notify Stan via email how you found it in the background. A little bit of information would be helpful.
Well, you and I both looked at the same source there at NOAA, the National Data Police Center. And as I said, and you said, I didn't even know they had such a thing. But if you read the map legend, what's current today, the stations with yellow are stations with recent data. And,
right.
At the moment, there are none of them that are showing any events happening. And the red stations are the ones with no data in the last 8 hours, which means, okay, they haven't reported in for 8 hours. Maybe that's because they're solar powered or whatever. But anyway, not to belittle the concern. It's just that, Doug and I just couldn't find where it said that they'd been turned off.
Well, see, I look at these buoys all the time, especially when there are earthquakes and things happening, to see if, they're going on, any tsunamis are being generated or any change in the, depth of the water. And what I have noticed is that they are systematically, more of those are turning red and staying red and staying.
Really?
But it's not. I have not seen, them all be red at one period of time.
Well, the red does say stations with no data in last 8 hours, 24 hours for tsunami stations. So some buoys are for tsunami, some aren't. But unfortunately, they lump like water level or, sea level changes in with tsunami detectors in that red thing. So I don't know how many of those are actual tsunami detection stations that are offline or not.
Well, in trying to chase that down, does no data mean that the actual station is inoperative, or does no data mean that there's is there like a cutoff? In other words, like I was thinking of like a warning light. If we'll say a water level gets to a certain point, a warning light goes off, and it provides data in that fashion. So does no data mean that it's off, or it just hasn't registered anything of significance?
I would kind of go with what you said last, that it might mean that it's just in a normal state and there's no exceptional data being recorded. However, it does bear more research on our part anyway.
All right, perfect. Well, that makes sense to me. Well, learn something new. And Joe, you've been looking at this, and independent of me, so you can weigh in and have weighed in on that. All right, Stan. Wow, fantastic. You mentioned something in passing earlier, by the way, and I did catch it. The White House, what they're doing, and I don't know if that was kind of a nudge in a particular direction, something you want to address there conversationally earlier?
Oh, probably for another show. I mean, we're all pretty much bombarded with what the White House is doing to destroy America every day. This Obamacare, I mean, his fix is a temporary hold for a year, and then people are still going to have to reevaluate their insurance at that time and go through the sign-up process and all that kind of nonsense. So he hasn't given an inch, really, just delayed it. And when you have a board of non-medical personnel considered the top of Obamacare and say, well, look, gee, Doug, gee, Stan, you guys have got back problems. You're older, we're not going to approve any more meds for your operations because, well, basically it's time for you to leave. Just die. Go off somewhere and die. We're denying you medical treatment of any significance. When a board can be set up like that under Obamacare, it does concern me a great deal. It's just like Nazi Germany all over again. They want the perfect race.
I'm contemplating that day, of course, when medical intervention will turn into death panels, and people had fought us.
Bureaucracy.
Yeah, and people have said, "Oh, death panels, what a bunch of nonsense." But in essence, that's what we're really going to see.
Prove to me that you are worthy of receiving care, and that you can, have some feedback into the community that this care will,
There's a great twilight.
That's easy. I'm a member of Congress or the Senate.
There was a great Twilight Zone episode about that, where this one man had to prove his worth or be killed, and he was a librarian in a future date. It just reminded me of the present day.
I take it he didn't fare too well.
No, but it, of course, like all Twilight Zone episodes, it turned itself around. Natalie asked this. And Stan, this surprises me. Natalie writes, I was recently at JPL in Pasadena and spoke with one of their people. Now, they said
Jet
that
Propulsion Laboratory.
Right. They said that Iceland does not exist. I mean, what do you attribute that to? Natalie wants to know what's up.
Pretty nice picture of something that doesn't exist, and it's you can see it with the naked eye, with binoculars, and certainly with amateur telescopes. Something doesn't exist. I'm surprised.
Well, I mean, is there? I guess my question would be: would there be any reason for JPL to deny the existence of Iceland, or to minimize it, or to?
Well, to minimize it, maybe, but have they actually said that it doesn't exist?
I mean, they have models on it. I don't know how they could turn around and say it doesn't exist on something they track and have models on.
Hey, man, I just read them as I get them,
No, we shoot the messenger around here,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've on that page where I've got that stupa and the smoke ring thing on the website we talked about earlier, underneath that smoke ring picture, I've got something that we're working on now then. In fact, I'm having a meeting with my people here tomorrow. We think we have figured out a way to use what Lord Kelvin demonstrated with drops of water dropping down through hoops, through like two pans of water that were separated up on a little shelf, and it's called the Kelvin water drop experiment. And we think we can do this with just normal air blowing through a special kind of funnel that we've built, it funnels the air down into a special chamber that causes the air to flow through like a grid of conductive wire and to pass charge from one side of capacitor to another and charge it up so we can use electricity. The thing about it is there's no moving parts with this. And so I'm going to be eager to see what the rest of our team thinks about this. We've talked about it at length with moving versions, but this one here, the only thing would move would the whole assembly would turn on a central axis as the wind changed direction, because it has to face into the wind. But since windmills on farms have worked for hundreds of years, this will work the same way, just turning this collector. And if you look at that, you'll see what we're talking about. And those of you that are a little bit physics-minded and high-voltage experimenters, Tesla Club type members, if you'll look at that, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's using the moisture, the humidity in the air, flowing through the collectors, which are on the right, those big kind of open cylinders, and it focuses them through inductive conductors there. Well, they're shielded actually, but they're copper wires that have a wire going down to the negative terminal of the capacitor, and then the other one goes down to positive. You can see them crossing over there. And I think that's a good way for us to go to try to make solid-state non-moving parts. Those will last a lot longer than things with bearings and high speed and that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's something I'm sharing with you guys. If it pans out, it pans out.
No, I think that rounds it out here. I just double-checked my message board and incoming messages. I just want to thank you so much for sharing your time.
I'm not gone yet. I'm not going. If you got a minute, I want to tell you something else.
Oh, you know what? Look, you're welcome to. In fact,
you can stay as long as you want.
We're going to give you control of the board, and you can just take us out. No, go ahead, Sam.
On that same page with the wind generator and the stupas and stuff, you'll see two identical-looking pictures of a bead of Coca-Cola on the surface of a bottle of Coke on the surface. It says Coke spheres illustrate inertial gravity. Now you might think, oh, yawn, I'm not really interested in that. But this is the thing I was talking about was in the shower. And it's a spiritual thing because I have a little bit of a chat with the Lord every morning in the shower as well. And this, if you click on either one of these videos, they're the same video. One is just a .mov and the other is a .m4v, which plays on some mobile devices, whereas the .mov might not. If you do that, you will see that what I filmed back in 2005 when I was doing this experiment was that you'll see as the camera zooms out, and you'll see my picture, my image reflected in the surface of the bottle of Coke there with the camera. And as I zoom it back out, you'll see that there's a speaker turned upside down on the table, which is a plastic table, next to this Coke bottle. And I was running controlled frequencies through this between about 100 to 150 pulses per second. And it caused ripples to form from the outside of the Coke bottle across toward the center of the Coke bottle. And I found at certain frequencies it would form standing waves that you can see there even in the stills of, a wave pattern in the center and then a bigger circular pattern around that and then a big one. And in the picture, not the video, you'll see that in the video as well, but in the picture that you see a brown drop of Coca-Cola sitting on top of the Coca-Cola like you'd see in a rainstorm when the raindrops hit the pavement, make puddles on the pavement. You'll see little beads of water bounce up and float all around very rapidly, rapidly moving all over the surface of the water this way and that way, and some bouncing against each other, some hugging together. And this is how you create those things, but sustain them. And this is where you'll watch the video, you'll see that I'm pumping waves into this volume, let's call it space, the Coca-Cola space, the fluid of space. And how it creates, pops up out of nowhere from all these waves focusing, a big drop you see there, smaller drops that could represent a star, planets, moons around each other. And at the very end of the video, you'll see a little tiny ball go close to the two that are hugging together and bounce away as though it were, negative charge or something, and then it kicks it away. The standard physics description of this phenomenon missed the boat. They say that a pocket of air is around that drop of water, and that's what's causing it to hold its shape. It does not explain why some hug together and why some bounce away with a ferocity. It's because of the spin. Now, that planet I found out that I built there, that little ball of Coke, it will go like that. It will stay like that at that frequency I set. It will stay like that until I turn the power off 10 days later. It won't go away. It's because that sphere is spinning. You can't see it, but it's spinning, up and down, anyway, in the center, it's going up through the center of the ball and then down around toward the bottom and recirculating. It's just a constant recirculation pattern around its own little axis there. it is being fed energy from a wave in the fluid it's in, which can represent space. It can also represent souls and beings. The Bible tells us that we are held together. Everything that is held together, by the energy of God, the Creator. This proves that invisible waves virtually can constantly keep you alive, or a planet or everything else, instead of running down, constantly rejuvenated if you apply this frequency through the fluid of space, of existence. And that's what I realized in the shower, is that that's what the Lord's talking about. We're in mortal bodies now. These are in entropy. They're running down, and so is our planet. But where he is talking about outside of this, once this earth thing is over, is going to be a heavens and an earth that will be constantly replenished with these probably complex vibrations and waves going out through all of the creation. And it will sustain things, and we won't run down. I mean, that was you watch the video, and you'll see it. It just made a lot of sense when I looked at that from a biblical perspective.
So, okay, speaking from a biblical perspective as well, would this apply? I mean, would this be of the same concept of our DNA resonating harmonic frequencies, perhaps? I don't even know if that's kind of a connective question, but you mentioned frequencies, and that's what immediately came to my mind.
Well, it is harmonics, yes. In the case of the example I'm showing here, the waves that are coming in are flowing through the Coke bottle there, through the fluid in it. Those waves are adding energy into that spinning drop of Coca-Cola that's supported on the top of that. If I turn off the vibrations, within a few seconds, it will sink. It will run out of energy. Its spin will be absorbed into the Coke around it, and it will collapse down to the surface of the Coke and disappear. Yet, if I maintain that frequency at the right frequency, it will not only create this sphere and others, it will sustain them, because the vibrations coming through at that frequency are matching the spin vibrations of the flow of that little drop, so that it adds energy into it in phase, keeping it from collapsing.
Wow. Okay, I understand that. It explained very well, by the way. So, once again, though, from a biblical standpoint, as we decay, as we entropy, it takes over. What's the next step? What's the next part of the conversation here? You indicated a little bit about that, our heavenly bodies, and what does this tell you about the next step in our existence, existence of all?
For a little over 1,000 years, we're probably going to still be here on Earth. Some of us as beings that are with the Lord, and in bodies that did not decay. They're being constantly renewed by the frequencies, the harmonics that come out of him to all those who are linked to him. I think that's why he draws the parallel to those who are recruited, who are part of the bride, he calls it, are called that because the bride is part of the husband in typical terms, classical terms. And so she is supposed to, in essence, reflect the husband's wishes and go where he goes, go with him, because he sustains her and protects her. And when you look at this symbolism here, the beings that are going to come back as part of the bride, closely linked to the Messiah, will rule as priests and kings in this time for the millennial period of 1,000 years. And I think that will start within 10 years of now. At the end of that time, however, it says the heavens and the earth, as we know it, will pass away in a fervent heat and a rushing sound, and they will be replaced by a new heaven and a new earth. And at that time, I think the universe that we see now, which is all apparently running down in entropy, will be absorbed into the universe where God dwells, which is concentric or parallel to us, and the energy of our universe will be put into the patterns of the new earth and the new heavens there, and will be sustained by his presence, that constant series of waves that goes out to renew things. Now, if you ask me, where does God get the energy for that? That's a discussion for another lifetime.
Oh, wow.
Definitely keeping me intrigued and listening to you talk about the millennial reign is something that is seems so far away for so many, and so many wish it was here now. And I don't think that they're too far off in their timing. It will be here, and I think we'll be able to be here and enjoy that as well. Looking at how fast things are moving, it just seems, closer than not.
As you get older, Joe, time passes so rapidly that it's like years speed by like maybe weeks or months used to. The relative passage of time, things become long dates or long times become much shorter in your life. And that's another discussion, too, about why that apparently is obvious to us in our minds as we get older.
Yeah. Yeah,
well, you know what, Stan, and we don't have to discuss it fully, but time is not changing or speeding up, is it? I mean, because exactly what you said, and then I think most of our audience agrees, demographically, those of us in our age group or close to it. That it's
relative to our situation.
My goodness, time! It's like, wow, time just goes so fast, and it seems like time has accelerated. But has it?
Well, no, not really. But our perception of events has, and we perceive events in our life as relative or ratios. When you're a child, a baby, 1 year old, the experiences you've stored into that continuous loop, which is your spirit, your experiential knowledge that flows through your brain all the time, that has only 1 year's worth of events and sensory perceptions. And so you record, let's say you get up to maybe age 3 or 4 and you're made to sit in a corner, which might be 10 minutes for the parent, but for you it's a lifetime. And that is because you are comparing the events you're sensing there to what you've already learned in your 4 years of age. And, 10 minutes there maybe it'll make a larger ratio of those 10 minutes over 4 years. But as you get older, 10 minutes over 50 years of experience is a much smaller ratio. And, that then is your perception of time flowing faster. That's kind of the way I look at it anyway.
All right, Stan. We kept you over as usual, and your expertise and the knowledge that is inside that has to be massive brain of yours to hold so much information. We appreciate so much. We can't even put into words how much we appreciate you coming on each week and blessing us with the information that you know and helping our audience, answering the audience's questions, our questions. It is special these days to have a person like you, a friend like you, be able to reach inside and pick your brain, as we'll say, for that information.
Not a problem, guys. I enjoy it. It keeps me on my toes. I'm not sitting around doing nothing 100 hours a week.
Well, and I hope your back's doing better, and I hope Holly is doing better with the whooping cough.
She's not doing much better at the moment. We're trying some different things to break that up. But she's at the moment she's upstairs, hacking away, coughing. It's just they figure it's got to run a 10-week course. And there's not much we can do about it. So
10 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think we're on week 6 or 7 now. But we've tried all the doctor stuff, and it just isn't stopping. And we've tried the oils, exotic oils, to try to treat it as well. And it's a tickle down right at the top of your windpipe, and it doesn't necessarily produce anything. It just tickles and makes you cough. It's like an irritant on that little lip of the bronchial pipe there. But anyway,
you guys will say in our prayers. And
thank you, much appreciated. And Doug, I read your email about how traveling in a car gives you grief. I've got to do that tomorrow as well in a meeting I'm going to. I was telling you about, and I hate traveling by car these days because it vibrates the back and the neck, and you feel it all the way there and all the way back.
Now, was he specific about the grief being caused by other passengers, like his son, or was it the
Well, I'm not going to give you away.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Hey, listen, parting thought, guys. Look in the Bible, in the Revelation, where it's talking about where the Messiah returns and the holy city of Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem, comes down to earth, and he sets up there in Israel to rule the earth from there. And living water flows out from him throughout the world. And that fluid, that living water, does make me think about this vibration we were talking about with the Coke bottle thing.
Okay. Definitely something we will do.
I think I understand where you're going with that, and thank you for that additional bit of knowledge there. Wow. And
it
think
seemed
about
important. It just leapt out at me for some reason. I don't know why.
Wonderful. And I suppose we can announce this now as well before you leave.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, Stan and Holly Dale have graciously, and we talked about this before, they're giving away 10 copies of Prudent Places USA. Holly has put her heart and soul and a lot of time into this. It's a CD, and it's also on a flash drive. And you recall, folks, the drawing that we had for the Dare to Prepare book, Holly's book. Well, this is now the Prudent Places CD or flash drive. And there will be 10 lucky listeners to the Hagmann Report and visitors to standdeo.com and HomelandSecurityUS.com who will, all you have to do, folks, is very simply do this. For a chance to win your copy of Prudent Places USA, the 4th edition. This is jam-packed. And if you've got other editions, previous editions, you've got to get the updated version. But anyway, all you have to do to enter the random drawing is send an email with your name and mailing address to stan@standdale.com. Now, in the subject line, here is very important. In the subject line, put Prudent Places Drawing, or else it could be missed, and we don't want to leave anyone out. And in the body of the email, it would be very helpful, 2 things. If you would include your preference, whether you would like it in a CD version or a USB flash drive. Absent of your preference named, a CD is going to be sent. And also in the body of the email, please help us out and put your name and address, mailing address, so the product can be shipped to you. Now, this is a great deal, a very valuable product. So
all entries will receive a complimentary tumbleweed as well.
Yes.
Look, guys, they don't need to put their name and address in. Their name would be helpful, but and their state.
Okay.
But
all right.
That way we don't have to collect or have here in our presence anybody's mailing address or an address they're afraid might be given away to someone. We don't do that anyway. But we just gave away 10 King James Bibles and 10 Dare Prepares on our website here last week, and we told people then, look, unless you win, we don't need to have your address, but your name and your state would be nice.
Okay. All right.
So that's a proviso, and send it to Stan Deo, not just Stan Deo at standdeo.com, and I'll put you in the drawing. We had several thousand people in the last one, so 2,000 or 3,000 people, something like that, and so you got a chance of 1 in 200 or 1 in 300 of winning something.
That's fantastic, and it's well worth it. And you know what? Christmas is coming, Hanukkah.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say show your family and your friends that you really care about them by ordering them a copy of Dare to Prepare, the 5th edition, Cosmic Conspiracy. You can't forget about that, and as well as Prudent Places USA. Do it while you still can, because who knows? I mean, we're living, as far as I'm concerned, we're on borrowed time here. We really are. I mean, it's events are taking place so quickly.
They are.
Yeah.
It is. And people are asking this a lot. Even in spite of the fact that we've got this Prudent Places thing already put together for them, and all they got to do is get it and look at it. After they get it, people are still saying, look, well, which do you pick? Which is the safest place? And we have to tell them, look, there is no safest place. There are some that are less prudent than others. But in the end, all the earth is going to be having traumas of some sort. So hunker down on the basis of what data that Holly's put into that disc. Hunker down in the areas where you can get what you need for your situation, like whether it be hospitals for elderly, or whether it be work, or whether it be close to farm property or, that kind of stuff. Less lightning strikes, less coastal problems, all that kind of stuff. People have to make the decision for themselves because there is no one pat answer for everyone. It just doesn't work that way.
Very well said. Well, thank you again, my friend, for taking additional time out of your busy schedule. And, of course, we've kept you over, so as usual. But Tuesdays with Stan. Tuesdays with Stan, and it's more popular than Tuesdays with Maury. So I just want to say thank you so much for all that you do. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
You bet. Shalom.
All right. Final hour this Tuesday, November 19th, 2013. We just had our Tuesday segment with Stan Dale. Go back and listen to that via archive if you joined us late, as many interesting questions were asked and answered as things are changing rapidly with nature, with the atmosphere, with our Earth, with our universe. And it is overwhelming at times. It is troubling at times. It is leaves you scratching your head. But we will get through this, and we will get through this together. And one thing we need to do is continue to pray for each other. And while I'm reminded of prayer, I want everybody, if we can, to keep Larry in their prayers, to keep Brother Marcus and his family and ministry in your prayers, to keep Pastor Langford and all the guests that come on our show, Steve, in your prayers as the spiritual battles continue to increase and the strength that we have in our spirit needs to be constantly rejuvenated by the Lord, and prayers certainly do help that. We all need to pray for spiritual strength to continue to move ahead and face these issues that we are, that are thrown in our lap every day, no matter how outrageous they are, no matter how angry they might make us or frustrated they might get us. We need to be ahead of that and keep people in our prayers, keep the fellowship going with one another, and never let the chaos and the injustice of this world take away our hope that the Lord has given us. I'm going to hit a news story, then we're going to go to calls at 661-244-9839. Chaplains were mocked and forced out of a VA program for their Christian beliefs. This story from the 13th of November. 2 military chaplains are suing the Federal Veterans Affairs Department after they said they were mocked for their Christian beliefs and forced out of a VA chaplain training program. In 2012, Lieutenant Commander Dan Klender, a Navy chaplain, and Major Stephen Furktow, a retired Army chaplain, was enrolled in the VA's Clinical Pastoral Education Program in San Diego. The class is required for chaplains wishing to serve at VA hospitals. 2 chaplains are members of the Conservative Baptist Associations of America, a denomination that places a high priority on Scripture and faith in Christ. The 2 chaplains charged that they were ridiculed and taunted by the program's director, a Nancy Daitesh, a VA employee with a reputation for antagonism toward evangelical Christians. Charged John Wells, an attorney for representing the 2 chaplains in the suit. She's been very critical of Christians, Wells told Fox News. Instead of teaching anything dealing with faith issues, she's dealing with a holistic, humanistic approach. It's the idea that the Spirit comes from within. The lawsuit filed with the Secretary of Veteran Affairs, Eric Shanesky, charges, among other things, that the director said VA policy forbade chaplains from praying in Jesus' name, and that the chaplains could not quote Scripture in her class. Mind you, this was a class for Christian chaplains. And I'll leave it at that and go to the phones.
This is a war on Christianity. I don't want to leave it, really. This is a war on Christianity, folks, and war on the followers of Jesus. Can you think of anything more antagonistic than what's taking place within our military? This will extend out to, I know fire departments have chaplains, police departments have, some of the larger departments have chaplains. Don't be surprised when you hear about this happening in your larger city police and fire departments with their chaplains, with their ministers. And we're seeing this. This is directly the blame for this needs to be laid directly at the feet of the Marxist tyrant in the White House, the man who doesn't belong there. Now, before I get on a rant, go ahead, Joe. I'll just leave it with you.
Okay, we're going to go to the phones. Area code 562. Thank you for holding. We're coming to you first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Stop it.
562. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And we'll come back.
Maybe.
407. You're up next. 407. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I called in last night and spoke to you guys. It's Al from Orlando.
Hi, Al. What's on your mind tonight?
I did see a article today, and I thought it was weird because I heard Doug say it twice about the NHTSA and how it rolls off like that. But they were basically saying they wanted to implement in all new vehicles, I guess, a way to record everything that goes on and eventually have it to where the government will actually be controlling the car, which will in turn, all that kind of crazy stuff like accidents, and talk about passengers in the car and, the steering wheel and the brake and the gas, and tell you how fast you're going, how slow you're going, all this kind of crazy stuff.
Yes, this is invasive as it comes. The National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration wants to decide whether or not to begin a rulemaking process to mandate newly manufactured cars include what's being called vehicle-to-vehicle communication technology that constantly broadcasts via radio waves the car's location, direction, speed, even the number of passengers in the car.
I just thought that was amazing.
You don't think it's too invasive? You don't think the government needs this information?
Yeah, I think they're a little bit crazy. I mean, people are really feeding into it too. On top of that,
well, the other part of the equation too. Look at these commercials for Progressive Insurance, and that little tiny thing that you attach to your car, you fix to your car that supposedly assesses your driving habits. Now, think of the mentality, the pathway that this is blazing to condition us to accept the black boxes in vehicles. And it's, by the way, it's Progressive Insurance. Go ahead.
And it's funny you say that because I had recently just switched companies, and just talking about that is kind of funny because they asked me if I wanted that, and I told them, are they crazy? You know what I mean? And then they started laughing. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
And also, I seen another story today. Anything with John Kerry in it, I find it kind of suspect. So I seen another story today where they said Kerry was proclaiming that some treaty, like a Monroe Treaty or something, was over, and it was between us and South America, something like that. A treaty that said that no European countries could come over and take them over or proclaim land or something like that. I just thought it was, something to keep an eye on. If he's walking around proclaiming things, you got to pay attention to Kerry.
Absolutely. And without respect to what you're referring to, treaty-wise, Kerry's, let me see here, Kerry's brother, I believe it is, John Kerry's brother was, I don't want to speak out of school, I'm trying to find my notes on this, was deeply involved in the Franklin cover-up. And I mentioned this. Folks, you can search the Franklin cover-up, the Franklin case. It's about child abuse, Satanism, and murder in Nebraska. But and forgive me if I'm not accurate here. I'm searching through my notes here, but a definitely a relative of John Kerry it was center stage in that scandal, in that incident. So yeah, it's amazing. And so this treaty, and don't forget the Trans-Pacific Partnership as well. So we have to remember that. But caller, thank you, my friend. God bless, man.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate everything you guys do. Me and my girl, we stay locked in. all the time with you guys. So you guys do a great job, and God bless, and we'll enjoy the next caller.
All right. I hope to one day get down to Florida, and we'll look you up sometime, maybe.
Well, all
that'd be great.
All that stuff that Deo's talking about, makes me want to leave anyway. So, and Augusto Perez, and you just want to kind of get away from Florida right now. You already have to pay the mouse anyway when you're here, so it just is
pay the mouse.
Mickey, that is,
Yeah, I get that. That's very good. All right.
Take it easy.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for the call.
Got to pay the mouse. Seriously. Wow. Okay.
We're going to try one more time to go back to this 562 number, as we don't have a lot of people on hold. And we got about 20 minutes or so to take calls. So if you want to weigh in, 661-244-9839.
This is your chance. And if not, I've got something here that I need to bring to the forefront. But go ahead.
Okay, 562. We're going to try again. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
You didn't come across the cheese, did you?
Okay.
All right, we'll take a
go ahead.
Big Mac and.
Yeah, you go ahead and get into what you need to, and I'll bring on callers if they.
Yeah, and then like I said, now's your chance if you want to. It's not that we're begging for callers, but we usually don't take calls when Stan's on, and a lot of people get in the habit of just not holding. But this Friday or this week, I should say. I'm sorry. This week is it is Friday. As a matter of fact, is the 50th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination. Folks, have you seen the influx of articles and of reports and blog posts and news reports of the Kennedy assassination? And I'm sure you have. But how many?
Everywhere. TV. I mean, I don't even have TV, and I see it. When we were traveling out of town on commercials. You see it everywhere, in articles especially. I think Newsmax has a whole big breakdown of the timeline, different articles. Yes.
Yeah, well, I want to just kind of get the gray matter going, folks. Think about this. When did the Kennedy assassination take place? It was November of 1963.
Was it a Tuesday? November 22nd, 1963. Dallas, Texas.
Look it up.
Okay.
Really, you asked me that question, right?
Do it later.
Joe. Anyway, think about this. Think about the Kennedy assassination from this perspective. It happened in November 1963. It's a Friday, Joe. I didn't want to,
Sorry, I wasn't alive then, as you were in your 60s, so you have a very
See what I got to put up with.
Great memory of this.
All right. Yeah. Folks, we've seen a lot of conspiracy theories. We've gone through a lot from the absurd to the more practical, if you would. And one of the biggest conspiracy theories I will submit to you is the Warren report, the Warren Commission report. To me, that's nothing but a conspiracy theory. When you take the magic bullet and so on, and to me, it does not matter. You've got to look at the facts and only the facts. And more facts are coming out. And with the refinement of physics and the refinement of different aspects that affect the analysis of the assassination, we're seeing more and more things that are available. But here's one thing that we don't need to get into conspiracy to really talk about or to think about or to put in the context of 1913, we saw the birth of the Federal Reserve. The charter was for 100 years, correct? Yes, Joe's shaking his head. So that puts us to 2013. Smack dead in the middle of that 100-year charter is 1963. If you take 50 years, add it to 1913, you come up with 1963. So that marks the midpoint of the Federal Reserve's existence. But I want you to think about this. At that moment, when Kennedy was alive, when he was right after the Cuban Missile Crisis, or around that time, he signed an executive order that actually created a non-Federal Reserve currency. Now, I'm not going to be very articulate or very precise with my description of this, because I don't really need to be. What he proposed to do, and actually did through executive order, was to create a currency that was outside of the Federal Reserve. Of any and all things, perhaps, I'll submit to you, that could be a factor in his continuing existence, Kennedy's existence, with respect to the sitting in the seat of power in the Oval Office, would that one act, through an executive order, to issue currency outside of the Federal Reserve, outside of this private banking cartel, outside of this money club, where 40% of the interest, or 40%, goes into the pockets of this economic royalty under which we are slaves. Let's look at the assassination, perhaps, through the lens of the Federal Reserve, the fiat currency, and the killing of the dollar. Because if you look at this, and if you believe, for example, that the powers have this long-range plan, and they do, they really do, you've got to admit that that anyone who would threaten that long-range plan, especially and not limited to any sitting president, would be subjected to the wrath should they attempt to interfere with their power. Now, the Federal Reserve creates money, well, based on debt. The Federal Reserve, they give us paper, and we give them our time, our toil, our life's blood for that piece of paper. For just a single moment in time during Kennedy's reign, he attempted to get us out of that vicious cycle. We had debt-free money for a moment via executive order. The very executive order that was rescinded by Johnson in his first days of office following the assassination. The feds, they, to their advantage, these booms and busts and booms, the cycles of the monetary cycles of booms and busts. So for all of his faults, all of Kennedy's faults, for all of the things that he did, and for his, even for his, well, one would say potentially treasonous activity. Remember the signs in Dallas: treason, wanted for treason. For all of that, is it possible, ladies and gentlemen, is it possible, I ask you, that the powers behind the politicians and the faces of the politicians, is it possible that halfway through the charter, when Kennedy found his way and said, you know, I see what's happening, we need a debt-free currency, is it possible that the assassination could have occurred at that critical 50-year mark within the charter, after Kennedy decided to take us to create his own, or create the currency outside of the Federal Reserve? So the next time that you see, whether it's tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, anything about the anniversary of Kennedy, watch to see if they focus on the Federal Reserve, on his executive order.
Nobody does. Really, nobody does that I've seen. It's very rare. Very, very rare. And it's true, but it's rare. We have a bunch of phone calls lined up. Let's try and squeeze some of these in if you're done.
I'll submit the phone calls. Go ahead.
Okay, we're going to go to 909. Thanks for calling in. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Oh, hello. This is Tessa.
Hi.
I want to apologize for ringing off so soon last week. I was dead tired and couldn't stay awake. But the Kennedy assassination always wakes me up. I remember it as clearly as if it were today. And there's one thing of which I'm certain, and that is that our government lies to us all the time about everything, even when they don't need to lie.
Don't hold back now.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. They do lie. But what do you think? What do you think was the motive for taking out Kennedy? And motives are not in short supply when we talk about the Kennedy assassination. You were alive back then. You were aware of what was going on. What do you think happened? What was the motive in your mind?
Well, so many people had motives that I've concluded that they all did it. Every one of the suspects had a hand in it somehow. And, of course, Jack Ruby said that LBJ did it, but we know that he didn't fire any shots that day. He must have gotten someone else to do it. Yeah.
Do you think George H.W. Bush had any role in the assassination? And let me take it one step further. Do you believe that the CIA was involved?
Oh, absolutely. As far as George Bush goes, there were so many people in that area that we can't know who was trying to prevent it and who was trying to make it happen, but nobody did prevent it. So. No,
obviously not. Yeah, and by the way, somebody just wrote me, the executive order number is Executive Order 11110, which has to do with the Secretary of the Treasury, issuing silver certificates under the Thomas Amendment, just as an FYI. But I would urge people to really check that out as well. My goodness. And I remember, of course, this caller is the widow of Philip Dick. I'm correct on that, right?
Right.
Okay, all right.
Author of Minority Report.
I'm not technically his widow, but I'm his last wife.
Right. But, author of the Minority Report and other, what was it, Total Recall and other...
quite a few books and stories, but those are the most famous. That he was consumed with trying to figure out who killed JFK.
Really?
And
that's interesting.
He tossed in Nazis into the mix.
Really? Well, don't forget Kennedy's propensity and desire to go to the moon, and we know what NASA. We know about NASA and the oddities surrounding NASA, and the we know that, for example, that the powers behind the powers, the Illuminati, are Satanists, but they're more importantly they're Saturnists, and the Saturnists. I think Kennedy knew what was going on when you start naming ships and missions like Gemini and Mercury and after some Greek mythological gods. So you have to wonder there too. So it's interesting that you would bring that up.
I've heard that JPL should be called Jack Parsons Laboratory.
Ah, yes. Boy, you could really provide a lot of information based on your knowledge, your own knowledge, as well as having spent a lot of time with author Philip K. Dick as well. My goodness.
Well, I think I can on my radio show.
You've got a radio show?
Yeah, I'm on Blog Talk, and it's also Freedomizer Radio on Mondays.
Mondays? Okay, tell us more. Give us a plug for the show.
See, well, the show is called Ancient of Days, and it comes on Mondays at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And, of course, on Monday I'll try to do a sort of wrap-up of the celebration of JFK's life that they're having in Dallas, where nobody who had anything to do with it is allowed to be there,
Right. Now, once again, the name of your show is?
Ancient of Days.
Ancient of Days, okay.
Yeah, it's one of the names of God.
Okay.
We're going to have to listen to that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Well, God bless you, my friend. I thank you so much for calling back in, and we so appreciate your insight and your information. It's always good to hear from you. And we'll tune in. Ancient of Days, folks, Monday at 3 p.m. All right.
I'm sure you have other callers waiting, don't you?
We do. As a matter of fact, we're going to cut you, but thanks for your call. We really appreciate that.
God bless you.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
Interesting, Joe. Very interesting.
Yeah, now I just want to say this. We're going to take one more call and then close up the show. But tomorrow we will have Steve Quayle, V, and Michael Arevna on. You're not going to want to miss that show. That's tomorrow at 8 p.m.
Real quick on that show. I had sent you, Joe, the title to that show, or what we're going to be talking about, and weaponized banking, cybersecurity hacking, and electronic theft of all personal identification and information. Let me say that one more time because it conveys the essence of the program for tomorrow. Tell a friend, please. Tell a friend, tell a family member, tell a mundo. I don't know. Just spread the word.
Telephone.
Telegraph.
Tumbleweed.
Weaponized. Sorry, we get a little corny, I guess, at the end of the show. Weaponized banking, cybersecurity, hacking, and electronic theft of all personal ID and information. This is really a serious subject, and I'm not going to take anything more away from the next caller, but please make sure you spread the word about tomorrow.
Absolutely. We're going to go to the last call, 719. We're coming to you. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Thanks for calling in. What is on your mind tonight?
I just thought I'd throw something at you. When we were watching Nebaru come in on the Hubble, we started making contact with all of the harbor masters around the southern part of the planet, something you guys were discussing earlier. And we were talking to a harbor master off the southern coast of, I could be wrong. It was either Africa or South America. It's been years ago. Right while we were talking to him, we made contact with dozens and dozens of harbor masters so that we could monitor the tides, because we knew that as Nebaru approached, the tides would start to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So we were contacting them all on a weekly basis. As we were talking to this one harbor master, the British Navy sailed into the harbor, and they came into the office and they told him, from now on, any reports about tides, weather, blah, 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 we will be giving the tides and weather reports. You will not be doing it anymore. And they did this to every single harbor master around the southern perimeter of the planet. And one by one, the British Navy shut them all down and took over control of the tide reports. And they were turning off the buoys because by 08 or 09, 010, somewhere around in there, the tidal buoys were showing tidal waves, and so they were turning them off one at a time because as the planet rotated, it caused the tidal buoys to send out tsunami warnings because the tides were getting higher and higher and higher and higher. We monitored it for several years before the British Navy took over and shut it off, and of course we didn't get any more tidal reports after that. But I thought I'd call you guys and throw that at you because I heard you talking about it. And
so, okay. So what you're saying, just to summarize it, you're saying that the information obviously was controlled, and
100%, because we were talking to a harbor master when the British Navy came in the building and told him that's it, no more tide reports, blah blah blah. We're shutting it off. We'll do it from now on, not you. And so they're totally controlled.
Okay, all right. So, looking at the buoy information, it could very well be where it's not. What we're seeing is not accurate. It's like everything else. It's fraudulent information. It's information based on a lie or lack thereof.
Well, they're hiding the tides. That's what they're doing. They're hiding the tides.
Wow. Well, very good. We're going to send Stan an email referencing your call about this. Interesting information. I want to thank you for providing that. Wow. Didn't know that. It was uneventful. I mean, ultimately everything was uneventful, but no, they still throttled the information.
Yeah, they.
Is that what you're saying?
We were in contact with all the universities too, and the same thing happened to them. We were in constant contact with the university at Cape Town in South Africa, and the same thing happened to them. They were told to shut up about everything that was going on because, you know, they're right near the beach there on the southern tip of Africa. And
Gotcha.
So the universities, everybody had a lid clamped on them around, it started really clamping down tight around 210. And as far as I know, the lid is totally clamped down on all the science people, all the departments in the universities of those countries around the perimeter of the southern pole. And they're real concerned about this because they know it's coming. And, I mean, you guys should understand that. All the bells are ringing on this thing. I mean, they've got their deep underground bunkers. The Air Force is creating big storms everywhere. I could carry on for hours about just what the Lord has shown me alone. And a lot of it's coming to pass now. And, did you guys pay any attention to what the guys in SEAL Team 5 were saying a year or so ago, 2 years ago, about what was going on with the Obama people planting nuclear weapons off the coast? And and then finally they started hunting and killing the SEAL Team members on SEAL Team 5.
Yes, however, the information was not specified to SEAL Team 5. Okay, we had various other information. It wasn't just specific to any one specific SEAL team. However, we don't. The information subsequent to that little burst of information back last year has been virtually non-existent. In the waning, or in the 30 seconds we have left, do you have anything additional to offer about that?
Well, one of the guys that I knew on SEAL Team 5 told me that Obama had people hunting them, and they were killing them as soon as they could catch them. And because of the fact that they had been up on the Mississippi River disarming nuclear weapons that had been planted up there. And as near as I know right